Hello, and welcome back to our last of the spring break live streams. My name is Scott Ford. I am a high school IT certification teacher out here in Humble ISD, that's a little northeast of Houston. I am also an adjunct professor for Lone Star Community College and a published textbook author. And I want to welcome you all to our last of the spring break live streams. Like I said, spring break, I am on spring break right now. Maybe one day I'll figure out how to vacation properly because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I have set aside from 6 to 9, except for Monday was a little bit earlier, to do live streams. I've done 2 live streams per night. Monday and Wednesday, we did the live streams for the A+ certification. And Tuesday, Thursday, today being Thursday, the last day, we are doing live streams for the CompTIA ITF Plus certification. And if these are well received, we can do some more as well. I'm more than happy to do some live streams from now going into the end of the semester for both my students who are working on their certification as well as those of you out there in YouTube land who also want to follow along. Now, you're going to notice it's not that polished, right? I'm filming out of my home office. Like I said, I'm on spring break. And so I don't have a fancy light set up or anything like that. It is just me in an office with overhead lights and talking to the microphone and talking to you all who want to learn this information. So just kind of managing expectations there. You're not going to get fancy lighting and all sorts of stuff right now. Although I do have a Stream Deck, which I've been adding sound effects to. I'm quite happy with some of them. So kind of really cool. So anyways, little evil laughs. Anyways, so before we jump into our presentation, because we are going to be talking about wireless fundamentals, and this is a much shorter presentation, I believe, than our networking fundamentals from our last presentation. But I wanted to share with you our Discord channel. This is the QR code to access our Discord channel. So our Discord channel is full of students, both my students that I see daily, as well as folks working on their certification from around the country and around the world. So you're more than welcome to join us there, ask questions, and share your victories as well as your challenges as you are working on your certification. So you're more than welcome to join us. And I would love to know, for those of you who join, how you're doing. Are you certified yet? Are you working your certification? When you're planning on getting certified, all sorts of fun stuff like that. Also a good reference, a good resource for help. So for example, there's the CompTIA Academic Store. If you're a student 16 and older in high school, college, university, or trade school, you can get a huge discount on your certification, on your voucher rate. So this is stuff we talk about in the Discord channel. Okay, so let's hop into why we're here, which is wireless fundamentals. Now, this is the fundamental stuff geared for ITF Plus certification. So we do leave a lot of stuff unsaid because this is the foundations. We're trying to give you a solid kind of bedrock on which to build down the road. So let's take a look at what our objectives are. Our objectives for this unit and the live stream is to identify and give a brief description of typical wireless devices, describe the different types of wireless networking layouts, list and give a brief description of different wireless standards, define service set identifiers and best practices on working with them, list and explain the different wireless encryption standards, explain other wireless security best practices, and list and describe common wireless attacks. So let's first jump into wireless devices. Now, they're considered wireless devices because unlike wired devices, we don't have cables. We don't use cables to connect our devices together through wireless. We use radio frequency, RF waves. There are specialized devices that allow networks to be wireless. You might also hear wireless networks called unbound media. And like we talked about in the previous live stream, we have the OSI model. Some of you, I just filled with a sense of dread. For those of you who learned OSI in the last unit, welcome. Now you're going to get more of this. Well, not really OSI, but just know that wireless still conforms to the OSI model. So what we talked about in the last one still applies to wireless, okay? All we're doing, however, is we're just changing the physical media, right? So what was physical media in the OSI model? That was layer 1. So hopefully you got that one. Okay. So there's a couple of devices unique to the wireless networking environment that you need to be aware of. First of all, we have something called a wireless access point, or a WAP. This was our word before Cardi B. This was our word first. So we have wireless access points. We have, by the way, it's so much fun trying to teach this to high school kids. Whenever I have to talk about wireless access points, I get a bunch of giggles. So thank you very much for that, pop culture. So then we also have wireless routers, wireless network adapters, and wireless repeaters. So this is a wireless access point. Okay, you might also just hear them called access points. Okay, often they also act like routers, firewalls, IP proxies. Typically in your SOHO, your small office, home office environment, they act as a whole bunch of different devices. They wear a lot of different hats. Even in a corporate setting, you can find wireless access points that do more than just give access to different devices. It makes connections via radio waves on specific frequencies and allows for the connectivity of various wireless devices, be it your desktops, your laptops, your tablets, your smartphones, your smart televisions, whatever. Wireless routers, most of the time, the wireless access point and wireless routers are the same thing. Usually, in most SOHO environments, your wireless router and your wireless access point are the same thing. They allow for the connectivity of various wireless devices. It makes connections via radio waves, like I said, on specific frequencies, and it allows the routing of data packets on the LAN, the local area network. Hopefully you remember that from our last live stream, and outside to the wide area network, or our WAN. We have a wireless network adapter. So in the previous live stream, we talked about NICs, right? The network interface card. We also learned why we don't call them NIC cards. But we have special ones called wireless network adapters, and these are NICs that do wireless. And in the early days of wireless connections, we would have to buy them as separate expansion cards. But as wireless networks took off and have become ubiquitous everywhere, they are typically built into your device. They are typically built into your laptop or your desktop, as well as other devices. So these are your NICs for wireless networking. You can also, if you need to, find them as USB cards or other types of adapter cards. We have something called the wireless repeater. What do you do when your signal doesn't reach far enough? Why, you can get a wireless repeater. This is supposed to extend the range of the wireless signal. Most wireless LANs have a range of about 100 feet in optimal environments, meaning you don't have walls in between. So you might have a wireless repeater. Now, I will say there are folks out there who are saying wireless repeaters are totally pointless. Here in Casa de Ford, my oldest son, Alexander, actually worked for Best Buy for a little while. He might be working for Best Buy again. He did a job interview today, so fingers crossed for him. And he convinced us to buy these Eros from Amazon. I know they're not pronounced that way, but you know what? If you're going to put two E's together, I'm going to call it an Ero. But they're really cool. They form a mesh network throughout the house. So those are pretty cool. But before that, we had a wireless repeater that helped a little bit, but it really just didn't do quite as well of a job. And so with the Eros, we are able to set up a mesh network throughout the house of wireless devices, which made my kids and my wife very happy. Didn't make my wallet any happier, but you know what? They're pretty cool, I have to admit. Better network speeds all around the house. We are fully covered now here in Casa de Ford. So, wireless standards. So, picture for a second radio. If you want to listen to music on a radio, an old-fashioned radio, right? You have you want to listen to radio, whether it's FM, AM, you want to listen to the radio. So picture the radio. If you want to listen to music, you probably tune into an FM channel. For example, out here in the Houston area, we have the Buzz, which is supposed to play alternative rock, or as I like to call it, the rock I went to college with, or AM radio, if you want talk radio. Wireless also has different bands, like the FM and AM band, and use different channels within the band. So let me explain this for a second, because this is an important concept to get. This is going to help you understand wireless, okay? We have bands on our radio. We have FM and we have AM. FM and AM, okay? These are our bands. So if you want to listen to music, typically music is kind of on the FM band, while talk radio is more often found on the AM band. Now, just because you want to listen to, let's say you want to listen to rock and roll, okay? You want to listen to the oldies. You would go to FM. But just because you go to FM doesn't mean all of a sudden you're listening to the oldies. You can listen to all sorts of different radio. You have oldie station, new rock, you got country, you've got Spanish, you got all sorts of different radio stations. But to get to the radio station you want, you go to your band and then you change the channels. Channels, we get channels pretty easy, right? 94.5 or 101 point whatever. We have our different channels within the band. Wireless has the same idea. You're going to have bands and you're going to have channels. So hopefully that made sense to you, because we have the 2.4 band and the 5 band. So the 2.4 gigahertz band and the 5 gigahertz band. And within those bands, there are also channels for our wireless devices to work under. So as a 2.4 gigahertz band, in the US, we have channels 1, 6, and 11 that wireless devices can use. So the 2.4 gigahertz band can have issues with overlapping channels, which can negatively impact wireless performance. Now, when wireless came out, this was pretty cool. We didn't have a lot of wireless devices at the time, and so we really didn't run into this problem. But the issues we're running into is that we have a lot more devices and there's only so many channels that this band we could use. And we want more channels to choose from. So we have the 5 gigahertz band. The 5 gigahertz band has non-overlapping channels. In the US, there are 25 different channels that we can use. It can also combine or bond multiple channels together, which help increase throughput of the network. So I'm hoping you get the concept of band and channels, right? Bands are the AM, FM, while channels are what station you want to listen to. Okay, 94.5, 101, whatever. Okay. So you might hear different terms. We have WLANs and we have Wi-Fi. WLANs refer to the generic wireless LAN, while Wi-Fi is actually a trademark term. Wi-Fi is trademarked by the Wi-Fi Alliance. So these terms are typically used interchangeably. It's not really a big deal, but just know that wireless LANs, WLANs, and Wi-Fi are the same thing. The difference is Wi-Fi is a trademark term, okay? All right, if you remember from our last live stream, we took a look at Ethernet and how Ethernet sent information, right? We looked at the CSMA CD. Basically, kind of summing that up, it was your computer or device would pick up the phone line, listen for a signal, and if it heard a signal without anybody else on it, it would start to dial out. If somebody dialed out at the same time, you would have a collision. The frames would be destroyed, okay, and it would have to resend the information. So that was the CSMA CD, collision detection. Wireless uses something called collision avoidance. What collision avoidance does is the wireless device is going to go and talk to what it's going to communicate with and says, hey, we're going to send a signal to you. Can we reserve a time to talk to you? And so by sending a thing to reserve a time, we avoid a collision altogether. So wired devices is collision detection. It knows when something went kaboom, while collision avoidance reserves a time to talk so we don't get the collisions. Okay, now we have wireless standards. We looked at in the previous live stream the 802.world. This one we're taking a look at the 802.11, which deals with wireless. Now, this might seem daunting. You might look at this and say, that's it, I'm not getting to IT. But here's the problem. This is stuff that you probably need to know just by being, but just by using technology. You might need to go to the store one day. You might need to go to Micro Center or Newegg or Best Buy and pick up a new router for your home. You might need to get a new router that's going to conform to one of these standards. So this is stuff that even consumers should have a general knowledge of, okay? So we have 802.11a, B, G, N, Wi-Fi 5, otherwise known as 802.11 AC, and 802.11ax, which is Wi-Fi 6. Now, you might be looking at this and saying, are those really all the current standards? No. This is what's on the exam. Remember, exams are written typically before the newer technology has been released. Sometimes these exams can be 3-4 years old, and so this represents the technology that was available when they made these exams. So here are our different standards. Now, the 802.11a was not the first standard to make it to the market. 802.11a is unlike all the other standards we're going to talk about. First of all, it used the 5 gigahertz range, which was bizarre for the time, as you'll see in a second. The 11a is not compatible with B or pretty much anything else we're looking at here. And it had a data transfer rate, which is pretty darn good at the time this came out, which was 54 megabits per second. Remember, this is bits, not bytes, so megabits per second. And it had a range of about 150 feet. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about ranges, this is in perfect simulated worlds. Okay, everything is fine, everything is wonderful. There's no clouds in the sky, there's no walls in the way. This is this is perfect conditions. Okay, so now we have the 802.11b. This was the first standard to become commercially successful. I was working at Best Buy many years ago when this was the big thing, and 11b was what people were getting. A lot of folks were introduced to wireless with the 11b. It worked at the 2.4 gigahertz band, and it competed with a lot of other wireless devices on that band. It had a data transfer rate of 11 megabits per second, and it had a range of around 300 feet. This was the commercially successful standard. 802.11a, not so much, but B was very successful when it came out. There was a lot of convenience, and people jumped on it very quickly. So later, back in 2003, we saw 11G come out. And G was, wow, I remember when G came out, that was an easy sell because, as you'll see in a second, it was just a lot better. So it still worked at the 2.4 gigahertz band, which made it backwards compatible with B. So if you were buying a new router, let's say that you hear about this 11G, you need a new router, you could go buy the G router, and it would work with B equipment, 802.11b equipment. So you didn't have to buy all new stuff. In fact, as you started to upgrade, it could work with your G, which made this very viable versus A, which was on its own. So G came out, and it was pretty cool. It had 54 megabits per second transfer rate with a range of around 300 feet. N came out, and also, again, all these updates were very well received for the most part, okay? 11N, or Wi-Fi 4, introduced MIMO, which is multiple input, multiple output. MIMO allowed wireless devices can now have more antenna. So you can actually have 4 antenna, or antennae, or however you say it. What was the antenna? Antennas? Anyways, things that stick up, okay? You could have these on your router now. You also had frame aggregation. So you can send off 2 or more frames of data in a single transmission. So now, right, now we can double the speed. So this thing, compared to previous generations, is insanely fast compared to the old stuff. We like this because at this point in time, you have your wireless connections. It's a lot slower compared to your wired connections. And now we have streaming media. You might want to watch YouTube. You might want to download videos, stuff like this. You're being limited by a slower wireless standard. Well, with N, you now get a lot more speed. because of frame aggregation, channel bonding, and MIMO. So channel bonding is two channels that do not overlap, are used together to double the physical data rate. The channel bandwidth becomes 40 megahertz as opposed to just 20 megahertz. We then had the Wi-Fi 5. This only used 5 gigahertz band. Now keep in mind, we still have devices out there today that still like the other band, and you can still get these things. So by only using a 5 gigahertz band, obviously, you may want to rethink getting this unless all your devices use the 5 gigahertz. This introduced a new version of MIMO. It allowed the wireless access point to broadcast to multiple users at the same time, supported dual band operations, and some even tri-band. Then we have Wi-Fi 6, also known as high efficiency wireless. It initially supported 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands. So we like this because we still have devices that will work at the 2.4 gigahertz band, but it works now on both. The newer versions will also support the 6 gigahertz band. Yes, that's right. We now have an additional band. Instead of FM and AM, now we have FM, AM, and I don't know, some other band. But we now have 3 different bands we can choose from. So this is pretty darn cool. So here is a quick summary that you might want to pause and take a picture of, but you can see how much faster things have gotten, right? So we talked about 11. G came out, it was a lot faster than B. N came out, which was much faster than G. So you can see this was a huge improvement over even our G connections. So now we can actually have streaming media. Now, if you played video games, let's say you have your Xbox or your PlayStation and you want to connect it wirelessly, now you have the speed to actually play video games pretty decently. And you can see the frequencies that it supported. So I'm going to take a quick sip of coffee, which is now getting cold, and we're going to move on. So know the 802.11 standards by their letters and special names. So these are the 3 that you really should hone in on. You have the 802.11n, the AC, and the AX. So it's Wi-Fi 4, 5, and 6. The 5 and 6 became marketing terms, so they kind of started naming these like this. Because let's be honest, the consumer, right, the average consumer doesn't care about 802.11 whatever, right? Back in the old days, it was 802.11b and N. This is what we advertised it as. But we need a more friendly marketing term. And that's where the whole Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6 came in. It was just a friendlier marketing term. So mom and pop could go down to Best Buy, Micro Center, Newegg, whatever, and be able to buy, oh, this was Wi-Fi 6 or this is Wi-Fi 5, then they could have an understanding of what was the newer generation. Okay. Like I've already said, I've said this multiple times, range is theoretical. Okay, it's not always accurate. This is perfect conditions. Okay, no wind, no solar flares, Jupiter's aligned with Mars, and all this other stuff. All right, let's talk about wireless security. So wireless security is an interesting type of network. So with our wired networks, you would have to physically connect to the network, okay? It wouldn't advertise it was there. It was just there. If you knew it was there, you knew how to connect to it, you could connect to it. Wireless is different. Wireless announces to everybody, hey, I'm here. I'm a network. I'm a wireless network. Come connect to me, okay? So wireless network presents a little bit of a different challenge because wireless is out there, okay? It's been historically the most insecure type of networking available. Now, security has definitely improved a lot, but when it first started, wireless networks were, good luck with that. So modern methods of wireless security focuses on protecting data to and from the wireless access point and protecting the physical device from being compromised. So encryption is how users protect their data going to and from the wireless access point. Basically, what encryption does is that even if somebody can see your information, it is all gobbledygook. Okay, it's all written in code. So you can see the information. You can grab wireless information. It's not that hard to do. You could sit at Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts or Panera or anywhere else you have wireless and grab all sorts of transmissions. That's not that hard to do. But with encryption, even though you're grabbing it, it makes it harder to read it. You can't see what's actually being sent because it's encrypted. And I'm oversimplifying this. By the way, Network Chuck, I think he's based in Austin. Dude has like epic beard. Fantastic YouTube channel. Very high level compared to ITF Plus. But he does this whole thing about wireless encryption and hackers and all this other stuff. I show it to my students. It's pretty good. But Network Chuck, definitely worth recommending. I think he has his own coffee brand. Anyways, of course, right? He has his own coffee brand. I know that. So data sent over the wireless can be intercepted by anyone with the proper tools. Again, it's not that hard to do. And so by encrypting the information, we make it so if you get it, you can't read it. And there have been different methods to secure data in transition. We have open network, boo. We have WEP, also boo. We have WPA, not really that great. And we have WPA2, okay? So open wireless network. Open networks are not encrypted. Data is transferred in the clear. Don't do this. Do not do an open network, okay? All your data, everything you send through that network can be intercepted and read. There is no encryption. Anybody can see anything you send. Your usernames, your passwords, your emails. If you are connecting to an open network, everything you send can be seen. Now, I will say this. We spend a lot of time telling people never use open networks, never use web. And yet, I have seen a question on the exam. I can't tell you the specifics of the question because I'll be breaking the non-disclosure agreements. But there was a question where the right answer was use web. And we spend all of those trainers, all the books, all the trainers tell you never use web, never use web, never use web. And the right answer, I think, was either open network or web, which was completely. I was working for CompTIA at the time. And I remember telling CompTIA, this is a bad question. It should not be in the test bank. And the folks I talked with at CompTIA went, how did that get in there? But it was still in there. So just be aware of that. So open network, I highly recommend never using one of these. But if you wind up doing one, then make sure you're using a VPN, a virtual private network, a VPN, we'll cover later in upcoming units, but it does its own encryption for you, as well as HTTPS, which has encryption. But I highly recommend not using an open wireless network. We have something called a captive portal. A captive portal is if you've ever gone to a Panera or McDonald's where you go and access their network and a web page pops up with agreements and all this other stuff, that's what a captive portal is. Lots of places use them. It allows you to connect to their network. It usually has their rules, might have some advertising, but this is capturing you, so then you log in through their captive portal. You can actually create captive portals on your own. Your router most likely has the ability to create a captive portal if you know where to look, okay? We then have another one called wireless equivalency privacy. Don't worry what it stands for, just know that WEP is absolute, don't use it, okay? This was the first encryption protocol used for wireless networks, so they knew they needed to do something, and this was better than nothing. So it was introduced as part of the original IEEE 802.11 standard, and it was intended to provide privacy. Well, the problem is that it could easily be cracked. There is a program called AirSnort, and it's a powerful Linux program that you can use to crack WEP encryption. It doesn't take long to crack WEP encryption. And AirSnort is a free tool. In fact, it's got a lot of practical and valid uses. But you run AirSnort and you have WEP traffic going back and forth, it doesn't take long to crack it. Now, depends on the power of your computer and depends on how much communication is happening. So for it to crack WEP, there has to be communication happening so it can pick up that information and then you can crack it depending on the power of your computer. But we're not talking hours to crack stuff. We're talking seconds to minutes. So just be aware, WEP is not what you want to use. The problem is when WEP was discovered to have a flaw, when they discovered how easy it was to crack WEP, there was a panic going on because that's what people were using. So they needed something else, and they needed it fast. And so along comes Wi-Fi Protected Access, or WPA. This was designed to be the interim successor to WEP. It was designed to be a Band-Aid. We needed something fast, because WEP was just, it was destroyed, right? It wasn't going to work. So it was basically a patch until something better could come along, which also meant that it had to be backwards compatible. Because if you think about it, when it was discovered that WEP was completely and totally vulnerable, you had all these devices that had the ability to use WEP. Well, you just can't change everything overnight. That's very expensive. If you're an organization and you've got all these wireless access points and all these devices and they're using WEP, and all of a sudden WEP isn't working anymore, you just can't replace everything. That's crazy expensive. But at the same time, you need to secure your stuff. And so WPA came out, and it was supposed to be backwards compatible with WEP, which was intentional, so we didn't have to throw everything out and start over again. Okay? But the problem was, because it was backwards compatible, it brought the core and the core to its own disaster. It brought the keys to its own doom. And that was TKIP. TKIP is not an option for security. TKIP is what allowed WEP to be cracked. And so because WPA brought over TKIP, it also meant that WPA would eventually be cracked as well. So, moving on from that to our current standard as of the recording of this video, and that is WPA 2. This is the current standard, like I said, as of the filming of this live stream. Okay? It is a lot more secure than WEP and WPA. It uses something known as Advanced Encryption Standard, AES, as the encryption protocol. You're going to hear AES a lot. In fact, I talked about AES in another presentation. I don't know if it was A+ or ITF. AES is our current standard for encryption, okay? And this is what we like. This is what we're currently using. Now, that doesn't mean that this is not going to get cracked eventually. I mean, I'm sure TKIP was supposed to be all that and a bag of chips. But AES, as of right now, is the way to go. So, if you have the option between using AES as encryption for WPA or TKIP, don't touch TKIP. TKIP is the vulnerability. WPA2 also had two ways to implement it. You had personal and you had enterprise. Personal is what you probably have at your house. Okay? It's typically found in a small office, home office setups. It uses a secret key. It's a password. So somebody comes over, they say, hey, what's your password? Okay. Hopefully you're talking about your wireless network, and you give them whatever your password is, your secret key is, and they can get access to your wireless network. Okay. So users gain access to the network if they know the key. WPA2 Enterprise doesn't do that. WPA2 Enterprise is typically found in corporations and larger enterprise, where we have something called a radius server, which keeps track of account information. So you're entering your username and your login password to access the wireless network. That information is being sent to a radius server to authenticate and do all sorts of stuff. And we'll talk about the AAAs in security in another live stream down the road. Okay. So chances are at home, you're using WPA2 Personal. And at work, you probably have WPA2 Enterprise if you have to enter a username and a password. Then we have something called WPS. Now, picture this for a second, okay? And, I got the sound effect. Let me see what just happened.
System failure.
Guess what just crashed as I switch cameras? That would be right. PowerPoint. Let me get that running again real fast for us. And while we're waiting, give me a second here. Where are you? You are right there. Okay. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah. So I want you to picture this. Wireless is taken off. Okay, wireless is so convenient. How convenient? Well, let me tell you how convenient. Homes, when networking was taking off, when local area networks were really picking up, it would not be uncommon to go to a model home. These are homes that the home builders build that they want you to see, hey, this is a model home. Wouldn't you like one like this too? And you would go to new homes and you would have drops. You would have cables that would be dropped for networking behind the walls, just like electrical outlets, right? Like you could plug your devices in. Well, they would have RJ45. They would have networking places you could plug your networking in. So networking was picking up. People were going to network their computers, but people didn't want to drag cables throughout the house, nor did they want to have to go into the roof and do a drop. And so new homes at the time would come with drops built in. Well, then wireless kicks in. Wireless kicks in with a vengeance, right? I've showed you the standards. Look how fast they got. And people were like, I want wireless, because let's be honest, dragging a cable, even if it's already pre-installed in the wall, is still a pain. Now we have wireless. Now your television can connect wireless. Now your game consoles, your Xbox, your PlayStation can connect wirelessly. All these things are connecting wirelessly. Your printers can connect wirelessly. But it's still a pain because you still have to configure the device. You still got to put in the wireless name, the network you're connecting to. You still got to put the password in. So along comes this great idea to allow us to connect devices like printers and our TVs and our repeaters and all these other things to the network easily through something called WPS. And this was designed back around 2006 to make connecting non-PC wireless devices to the network even easier. All you had to do is simply push a button or put a pin in, and now your wireless printers, your speakers, whatever, could connect to the wireless network very, very, very easy. And they would auto-configure themselves. And everybody was happy. Everybody was happy. This was wonderful. All was good until this. Okay? WPS was very convenient before the dark times. Okay? It was discovered that WPS had a serious security flaw, and it was open to different types of WPS attacks. This is why we can't have nice things, folks, because we got this convenient tool, and people out there go, hey, let us, I think I got, there we go.
Your feeble skills are no match for the power of the dark side.
Okay, we got people who do nefarious things, and WPS was discovered to have major security flaws. It allowed bad guys to get access to your network, bad things. And so now it is best that you automatically, if you have WPS, to turn this feature off. Okay. So let's talk about other ways to protect your devices. We can change the SSID. We can change the default password. We can play around with the placement. We can work with power. We can do with MAC address filtering and update firmware. So let's talk about the SSID. The SSID actually stands for Service Set Identifier. It is the name of your wireless network. And all routers have a default name. So all routers, when you buy them from the store, come with default SSIDs. You can look them up online. They're all online. You can look them up from the manufacturers too. We're not talking about going to the dark web and finding this information. You go to the manufacturer's website, they will tell you what the name of their SSIDs are. And it will also tell you the password, which we'll talk about in a second. So one of the first things you want to do is change the name of the SSID. Okay. You might also consider turning off broadcasting of the SSID. So by default, your router is going to want to announce the name of your network. You can turn it off. You can turn off broadcast. Now, this is not a serious defensive strategy. Okay. When we're dealing with security, there's actually a joke I want to tell you. So two guys see a bear in the woods. One guy starts running. Another guy sits down, changes out of his boots, puts his sneakers on, and starts running. The one guy who's already started running goes, "You can't outrun a bear with sneakers?" And the guy goes, "I don't need to outrun a bear. I got to outrun you." Okay? That's what security is. Bad guys, given enough time, enough money, can hack pretty much any network out there. Okay? What you're doing is you're making it inconvenient. You're trying to make it so inconvenient and so much of a pain in the neck that they're not going to want to bother you. They're going to go on to somebody who doesn't do any of this stuff. And so while turning off broadcasting of the SSID is not, you're not doing mad hacker skills here, okay? But what you're doing is you're just putting one more pain in the neck obstacle in the way of folks trying to mess with you, okay? So it's a good idea to turn off broadcasting. Now, if you live in the country where you don't have anybody around you, don't worry about it, okay? But if you live in apartment complexes or townhomes where you're kind of really close to your neighbor, it doesn't hurt anything to do it, okay? But there's ways to find out the names. It's not that hard. Again, it's just one more thing that you can do to inconvenience people from messing with you, okay? So here is a screen capture of a router that I have, and they all have different backends, but you can see this is the SSID, this is the network name, okay, by default, and I can hide the name, I can hide the broadcast, okay? The other thing that you really want to do is change the default password. Just like all routers come with a default SSID, all wireless routers come with default passwords. You can look these up online from the manufacturer again. You don't have to go to the dark web to find these. They're on the manufacturer's website, and you want to change the password. Make sure to use a strong password. And we talk about strong passwords in more detail in the security unit. So here is a screen capture of a router that I was playing around with, and you can change the passwords here. Okay, you want to change the passwords from the default. The other thing is think about placement. Okay, with more of the advanced wireless network devices, you have antennas that you can actually limit where the signal goes. Now, in more advanced networking classes, you play around with different types of antennas and arrange them so the signals don't kind of go where they shouldn't go. But for our purposes, you probably don't want to put your wireless router along the wall that you might share with somebody else in a different apartment or a different townhome. Okay, think about putting your router more towards the center of the house or where you're less likely to have people just kind of stumble past it. So in our house, we have it in my office. This is towards the back of the house. I've got a neighbor right there. By the time they get this signal, it's a lot weaker. So it's not seeping out to the front, although with a mesh, that does change things. But we don't have anything by the front door, right? We don't have anything towards the front of the house. We're also not in an apartment or in a townhome. So we got a little space along our sides against our neighbors, okay? But consider trying to place your router as far away from the outside world as possible. Power. Some routers and some networking devices allow you to adjust the power that's going into the sending of the signal. Obviously, if you crank up the power all the way, the signal is going to go further. You might want to consider cranking the power down to where the signal just stays within your building or your home or wherever. This is for more enterprise versions of these wireless devices. Your typical router you buy at a store really doesn't have these options. Another one, if you really want to mess with people, is called MAC address filtering. Now, if you remember from earlier in this live stream, we talked about MAC addresses. MAC addresses, the last live stream, MAC addresses were the social security number of your network interface card. All NICs have this, including wireless NICs. So your computers, your desktops, your laptops, your smartphones, they all have MAC addresses. Everything that you're going to connect to your wireless network has a MAC address because they all have some sort of network card built in. On the back end of your router, you can have things set where you only allow certain MAC addresses to connect. So let me show you what this looks like. Here in this particular router setup, I can limit network access to only the MAC addresses that I want. Now, this can be a tremendous pain in the butt, okay? One, you can create it where you have this period of time where all your devices can connect and it will capture the MAC addresses. And you can say, these are the MAC addresses that are allowed versus entering them in manually, okay? This is a much more secure way to control your wireless network. The problem is if you add a new device, you now have to add that MAC address to that wireless network. So, for example, we went out and bought new cell phones. We were eligible for new phones, so I got a new phone, and my youngest son got a new phone. Well, if we did MAC address filtering, I would have to go back into our router and enter the MAC address for my phone or for his phone, or put on where it automatically captures things that are connected and hope nobody connects while I'm doing that. Okay, so MAC address is much more secure, but it's also a pain in the butt. And the other thing that you should be doing, if you haven't done it already, is you should update the firmware on your router. Okay, just like every other types of software. We had a live stream on software development. All software comes with bugs, flaws, holes. You need to make sure it's up to date. Well, routers also have firmware, okay, built-in software. You need to make sure that's updated. So when we, for example, let me show you the graphic here, okay? This is the graphic of a router that I was working on. And you can see I can update the firmware. I can check it and update and everything like that, okay? I think that is it as far as the presentation goes. Yes. So let me leave this one thing. So we bought the Evo, even though it was brand new from the store. And I do like their setup, by the way. I'm used to having to go into a web browser to set up the router. This one came with an app, which is really cool. I could put it on my phone. Even though this is brand new out of the store, brand new out of the box, it still required an update. In fact, I probably need to see if it requires an update now, because we got these 3-4 months ago. So I should probably check to see if there's a firmware update, see if there's an update that I need to patch it with. Because if you have security vulnerabilities, believe me, people know about these. Okay, security vulnerabilities are often published by the manufacturer going, hey, it fixed this flaw, it fixed this flaw, it fixed this flaw. So they're saying these were issues. These were security issues that we discovered and we fixed this. So it gives bad guys going, hey, wait a minute, I didn't know there was this problem or this problem. So make sure your stuff is up to date. All right. Before I switch gears too much, I wanted to once again share with you our QR code for our Discord channel. Okay. You are more than welcome to join it. I have my students in there, both my high school students and my college students, as well as folks from around our area. If you're working on your certifications, by all means, feel free to jump in there, ask questions. Additionally, I have my own website. This is mrfordsclass.moodlecloud.com. This is an LMS that I am paying for out of my own pocket. As you can see, I can have 200 active users. For some comparison, I only have about 71 students in my actual high school class. And so more than half of the folks in my Moodle site aren't even students that I see daily. I have people in here that I'd never see in person. And so if you want access to this, I'm not charging for this, okay? This is me being a good guy. You can get into our computer maintenance class. This is A+ certification, as well as our principles class. I'm more than happy to let you in. If you're on a Discord, by all means, send me a request and I will get you in there. Maybe down the road, I'll start charging for this, but right now, there is no charge to access this stuff. I'm just interested in helping folks out. Of course, you will be my guinea pigs as we're covering this stuff, and I always like feedback. And as you've seen probably from other live streams, there are some typos here and there. So, but I'm looking to improve this, and as I'm doing that, you get free access to all this stuff and help you get certified. I can tell you that I have more people get certified in the last 1 year than our district has in 5-10 years combined. So pretty good at what I do. This is not my first rodeo. I've been doing certifications for 20 years, done certifications for total seminars. That's Mike Myers and his folks. The FBI, local, federal, and state law enforcement officers did training for CompTIA, and I love helping people kind of get to that next level in their life. So it is 8:24. This is our last spring break live stream. If you like these, by all means, let me know. And we can continue these for the rest of the semester to help you guys get certified. But otherwise, that is it for me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, no matter when you're watching it. Be sure to leave a like, share it if you can, that always helps. And best of luck out there. Have fun studying. Until later, bye for now.